August 11th, 2025, a date that will be remembered as the day America's capital was transformed overnight. Washington, D.C. locked down. National Guard units in full formation, Marines on standby, federal marshals and park police moving in coordination, not chaos, but calculated order, not a power grab, but a mission to protect every American who lives, works, and visits here. And yet the media is in meltdown. Critics are screaming martial law, painting this as some kind of a dystopian takeover. But what's really happening here, guys? Is this a dictatorship? Or is it decisive leadership? Because for the first time in decades, the streets of DC are not being left to criminals, gangs, and cartels. They're being secured by a commander-in-chief who says enough is enough. So President Donald J. Trump, he didn't just roll in military to flex. He executed a historic security sweep designed to make the Capitol the safest city in America. And the scale of this operation, it's unprecedented. Federalizing law enforcement, integrating local agencies, and clearing entrenched criminal networks. And yes, taking on one of the most controversial moves any president has made in modern times. So, guys, in the next couple of minutes, we're going to break down exactly how this lockdown unfolded, what role the National Guard's really playing, the battle lines between Trump's team and his critics, and the part of this plan that could ripple way beyond DC into every major city in America. And when you hear the full story, you might just have to pick a side. Now, if you appreciate the news updates, click the like button and subscribe. I really appreciate your support. So, August 11th, 2025, the sun comes up over Washington, D.C., and the streets don't look the same. From Capitol Hill to the National Mall, the largest security sweep in modern American history is already underway. National Guard troops, National Guard convoys, they're rolling through strategic intersections. Marines are positioned at key federal buildings. Federal marshals coordinate with park police to secure tourist-heavy areas. This isn't scattered. It's not disorganized chaos. This is deliberate. It's a calculated operation that's designed down to the street corner. I mean, it's impeccable. So here's the thing. Trump's administration is not hiding it. They're calling it exactly what it is. It's a lawful constitutional measure to lock down the nation's capital for the safety of every American here. So what are the critics saying? Well, they're already screaming authoritarian takeover. The supporters are actually seeing something very different. They're seeing a commander-in-chief finally putting the safety of the people ahead of the politics of the city. Now, if you stand behind the commander-in-chief, President Donald Trump, number 47, drop a commander-in-chief in the comments, guys. So the question becomes, is this a proactive shield for the Capitol or the first step towards something far more permanent? Well, I'm going to get to that. Now, hours before the first boots even hit the ground, President Donald J. Trump signed a formal declaration. Washington, D.C. is a public safety emergency. They're in a public safety emergency at this time, guys. And standing beside him, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he laid it out clearly. This mission is about protecting the residents, the workers, and the visitors of our capital from rising threats. Threats that have been ignored or tolerated for too long. So here's where the scope widens. This isn't just about extra patrol cars and being, better lighting. This is a federalized security framework. Local DC police operating in direct coordination with federal marshals, the park police, the National Guard, all under unified command. Every agency, every officer, every soldier working from the same playbook. The left calls it a federal takeover for policing, right? Trump's team calls it common sense, eliminating all the red tape, replacing political games with coordinated action. And if you think that the accusations of martial law started here, you would be right. But what's about to come next in this story, this is going to make the debate even louder. Now, in just a minute, we're going to dive into exactly how these accusations actually began, why Trump's team says that they're wrong, and the one legal move that completely changes the narrative if you're willing to look at it from his perspective. Now, Medicare changes don't wait for anybody. They just don't, okay? And they're complicated unnecessarily. Once your enrollment window closes, you could be locked into your current plan for another year. This is why I partner with Chapter, guys. They make sure that you're in the right plan before the deadline hits. Now, Ed, 84 years young, he's a viewer of ours. He's now saving $684 a year after they reviewed his plan, of course. Francis Lutero is now saving $65 a month, which adds up to almost $800 a year. These results, they came from one timely phone call. I know, it's crazy. Can you imagine one phone call saving you $800 in a year, every year, year after year? It's amazing. That's why I work with Chapter. Do not watch the clock run out on you. Take control right now. You'll see a phone number on the bottom of your screen. Pick up the phone and call that number right now before it's too late. Phone number is 909-563-8279 or go to askchapter.org/Ron today. Now, it really didn't take long, but by the time that the first National Guard checkpoints were in place, the headlines, they were already in motion. Trump imposes martial law in Washington. I mean, we've heard the headlines already, right? Cable news panels lit up. Pundits painted the image of tanks on every street, civil liberties hanging by a thread. They called it a playbook for dictatorship, guys. Now, here's what you didn't hear in those sound bites. The legal framework behind the move, this operation isn't martial law, not even close to it. I mean, it's conducted under Title 32 authority, meaning the National Guard remains under state control, but every mission is federally coordinated. In plain English, the military is here to assist law enforcement, not to replace it. So, is this really martial law, guys? Now, these soldiers are force multipliers. They fill the gaps, they cover the blind spots, and they make sure that the police can do their jobs without being overrun. But the optics, they're powerful. And for those who already see Trump as a threat to their status quo, the sight of soldiers in the Capitol is all they needed to sound the alarm. You see what they're doing here, right, guys? And so this is really where the real tension kicks in. Is it a temporary security measure, or is it the beginning of an authoritarian power grab? Now, to understand why this debate is so heated, you have to look at how the forces are deployed. The National Guard isn't just wandering the streets. They're posted in high crime corridors. They're guarding federal buildings, and they're securing symbolic landmarks that, in the wrong hands, they could become targets. Marines and specialized rapid response teams, they're staged for emergencies. They're ready to move in minutes if violence breaks out. And yes, under the rules of engagement, if a crime is committed in front of them, the Guard is authorized to step in. They can detain suspects temporarily, hand them over to the police, and then move right back into their security positions. So critics are arguing that this is a dangerous precedent. The military detaining citizens, civilians, even briefly on American soil. Supporters see it as common sense. If a soldier watches an assault unfold, do you really want them standing there waiting for backup, watching the assault happen? Does that make any sense? Exactly. I thought so. So the visual is striking. Rows of disciplined troops alongside local police, radio chatter linking agencies that used to operate in silos. Now, for some, it's the safety that they've felt in years. It really is. It is the safest that they have felt in years. And for others, it's a vision that they've hoped that they would never see in America. So which side are you on, guys? And it's about to get even more controversial because I want to talk about what happens when you centralize every police agency in the Capitol under one chain of command, and how President Trump's team says it's the only way to fix a system that's been failing for decades. Now, if you thought that this was just a troop surge, think again, guys. What President Trump authorized is nothing short of a complete restructuring of security in the nation's capital. Now, for decades, DC police has been fractured. The Metropolitan Police, U.S. Marshals, Park Police, Homeland Security tactical teams, all working their own lanes, often tripping over each other in jurisdictional turf wars. That's over. Under President Trump's order, every one of these forces now operates under a centralized command structure, federal oversight that eliminates the political bottlenecks. Awesome, right? Secretary Pete Hegseth, he called it the guts to centralize where the system has failed. And he's right. For the first time in years, the city has a single point of accountability for its safety. Now, to some, this is decisive leadership at its best, the kind that gets results when nothing else works. But for Trump's critics, it's confirmation of their worst fears. that power is being concentrated in a way that could be abused. So where are we again? Efficiency or overreach? Which side are you on, guys? Let me know in the comments down below. And so now this is really where it gets interesting. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser spent years clashing with President Trump, but right now she's walking a line. Publicly, she's cautious, keeping her distance from the operation, but behind closed doors, sources say she knows exactly how fed up DC residents are with the state of their streets. Now, guys, if you're watching from Washington, D.C., comment down below. Let me know how you feel. Let me know where you're watching the show today from. And it's not just Muriel Bowser. Faith-based leaders, community organizers, even some local business owners have, even the ones that lean left, they're quietly supporting the lockdown because they've had enough of the crime, the gang activity, and the open air drug markets. Pete Hegseth put it bluntly. Citizens of Washington, D.C. are sick of this kind of environment. And if you talk to residents off camera, many will admit that they welcome a peaceful city where friends and families can visit without fear. But here's a twist. Almost none of them will say it out loud. The political cost is just way too high. So instead, we get this strange dynamic, public skepticism, private approval. It's crazy. And so this leads us to a question that we all need to consider. Is this quiet acceptance actually consistent, or is it quiet resistance waiting for the right moment to speak up? So, of course, I want to head right into the most visually controversial parts of this entire operation, the removal of homeless encampments from some of DC's most visible streets. Now, for some, it's restoring public order. For others, it's targeting the vulnerable. So which do you think it is? One of the first visible actions after the lockdown began, it was the removal of homeless encampments. K Street, the underpasses leading to Capitol Hill, sidewalks that have been lined with tents for years were suddenly cleared with military precision. National Guard units, they don't do it alone. They stood alongside the U.S. Marshals, Park Police, and local officers providing the security needed for crews to safely dismantle the camps. Now, here's where the divide widens. Supporters say this is what leadership looks like, reclaiming public spaces, restoring dignity to the city, and ensuring that residents and businesses can function without obstruction. Critics see something else entirely different. They're seeing a campaign targeting the vulnerable under the banner of cleaning up the city. And so here's the question that's kind of hard to avoid. When public spaces become permanent encampments, is removing them compassion or is it cruelty? But make no mistake, this lockdown is not an isolated action. It's the opening move in a nationwide law and order campaign President Trump has promised since returning back to the White House. The DC operation ties directly into broader efforts that are already in motion, targeting the cartels like Sinaloa organization responsible for flooding American streets with fentanyl and violence, basically designating major gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, giving law enforcement more tools to dismantle them, strengthening the border with military cooperation right alongside ICE and CBP, sealing off the flow of drugs, weapons, and trafficked humans before they ever reach U.S. cities. So for Trump supporters, this is a decisive action against forces that have been ignored or appeased for decades. For his critics, it's a dangerous precedent, expanding the military's footprint into areas that they believe should remain purely civilian. And so this is where it all comes back to the same dividing line. Is this the hard line that America needs to protect its citizens, or is it the first step in a slow march toward military policing? Now, of course, we need to look at how this lockdown isn't just fixing, or at least it's not just about fixing DC. It's really sending a direct, calculated message to criminal networks across the country and even beyond our borders. So if you think this operation is just about DC, you're missing the bigger play here, guys. President Trump knows every gang leader, cartel boss, and extremist group is watching this. The message is simple. If we can secure the nation's capital this tightly, we can secure any city in America. Every patrol route, every rapid response deployment, every visible checkpoint in DC is a demonstration, not just to keep the city safe, but to show what's possible in places like Chicago, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, San Francisco, if leadership is willing to act. Now, for law-abiding citizen, this is reassurance. For criminal networks, it's a warning shot. But of course, critics will spin it differently, calling it a political stunt, a flex, martial law, flex of power meant to intimidate more than it protects. And that's the tension. Is this deterrence or is this domination? And so here's where the Trump administration is really drawing a hard line in the sand. They're not shying away from the criticism. They're actually challenging it head on. Officials are stressing that this is not an indefinite military operation. There's no carte blanche for troops to operate outside the law. Civilian law enforcement remains in charge. The Guard and other federal units are here in supporting roles, but not in a ruling one. And so the administration is saying that the guardrails are there. Regular reviews, clear rules of engagement, and constitutional limits that ensure this operation doesn't drift into unchecked power. Now, critics, of course, they're not convinced. They're going to point to the scale of the deployment, the federalization of multiple agencies, and the simple fact that there's no fixed end date as signs that this could evolve into something more permanent. And so the debate continues. Who decides when enough is enough? And do we trust them to make that call? So here's the part that everyone's asking about. How long will the DC lockdown last? Now, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he's not given a specific date. Instead, he calls it conditions-based. So this means this operation ends when the mission's accomplished, when the crime is down, when the streets are stable, and when DC can maintain order without this level of federal support behind it. So could that take weeks, months, longer? The truth is nobody knows. And that uncertainty is exactly what fuels both sides of the debate. Supporters see it as common sense. You don't dismantle security measures until you're certain that the problem won't come back. Critics call it an open-ended timeline that's ripe for abuse. And so the tension builds. Is this a pragmatic approach to lasting safety, or is it a blank check for power? And so now I think it's your turn to decide. So on the one side, you have the Trump administration presenting this as patriotic, calculated, constitutional defense of the nation's capital, a president keeping his promise to protect the American people, no matter the noise, no matter the headlines. But on the other side, you got the critics warning that normalizing the military's presence in civilian life and, that once the door is open, it's hard to close. August 11, 2025 will be remembered as the day that Washington, D.C. changed, but history will judge whether it was the day America took back its capital or the day we crossed the line that we cannot uncross. So I'm going to ask you, is this dictatorship or is this decisive leadership? Drop your thoughts down below, guys. And before you go, YouTube thinks you're going to love the next video that just popped up on your screen right there. Click that video and let's keep this conversation going.